Good morning, Year 7, and welcome to our final lesson on what does the Queen actually do. This is, as I said, the 8th and final lesson, so please make sure that you've got a pen and some paper with you ready to start, and you're pausing the video as we go through. And at the end, you need to be sending me your final task. The final task is important because that's what we're going to be grading you on, and that'll mean that you're finished and we can move into the summer and have completed this series of lessons. So before we start, we're going to go back to our current Queen Elizabeth II over here. And last lesson we looked at Queen Victoria, who's over here. Your task is to use the words provided to tell me how these two monarchs are similar and how they are different. Use the key words around them to help you out. Come back to me in 2 minutes. Okay, so we can say that they're similar in government, the idea that they didn't have full power, instead the power lied within the government. They're different in terms of land. We know that Queen Elizabeth didn't have control over an empire. By the time she arrived, the empire was decolonizing. So it was actually Queen Victoria who controlled parts of the world like India. Both acceded to the throne from the previous monarch. Both have created a very strong, powerful legacy. The Victorian period is referred to as the Victorian period. The buildings and the kind of the other things from that period, the inventions. It is a time of huge prosperity for Britain, mainly as a result of slavery. Or sorry, not a result of slavery, the result of its empire. Army, both have a similar control over army. They don't have a huge amount of power. So yes, they are similar, but they're also quite different. So as it's our final lesson, we're kind of bringing everything back together. What I'd like you to do is I'd like you to take the seven of the monarchs that we've looked at, and I want you to identify who they are. So write the number and see if you can identify the name. Give it a go. Come back to me in 2 minutes. If you're struggling, wait for the hints. Okay, so if you're struggling to remember who these people are, please use these hints to help you out. Got Charles I, Victoria, William and Mary, Elizabeth I, Elizabeth II, Henry II, and Alfred the Great. So who are all these monarchs? Let's have a look. So number 1 is Elizabeth II, our current queen. Number 2, there are 2 of them, so it's William and Mary. We've then got Elizabeth I in all her finery. We've got Charles I, the king that was executed. We've then got Alfred the Great, who deserves that statue. We've got Queen Victoria, as we've just seen in the previous slide. And the final one then is Henry II in a very Middle Ages print of him, a portrait of him. Very basic kind of artwork there. So we've named the monarchs. And before we move on, we just need to remind ourselves about what Queen Elizabeth actually does. So I want you to think back to our first lesson. How much power does our current queen have, and how important is the queen? Spend 5 minutes writing down some bullet points and come back to me after that. Okay, so why is the queen so important? She acts as a focus for national identity, unity and pride, giving a sense of stability and continuity. So the Queen represents Britain, and people are very proud to be British, and part of that is that image of the Queen. The Queen and her family entertain and visit foreign powers to build and maintain relationships with them, which will benefit the country. So the Queen will go to different countries, or other countries will come to the Queen, and they represent business, and they then create trade agreements between the two countries. At times of national crisis, they act to maintain stability for the nation, so the Queen will speak to the nation like she did at the beginning of this COVID outbreak, like she would do on matters of kind of mass national security. She's still the official head of the Church of England, which is an important role. Every day, red boxes are delivered to the Queen's desk with documents and reports from the government, ministers and Commonwealth officials. They must all be read and, if necessary, signed by the Queen. So the Queen attaches herself to things that happen in Parliament, but she does not dictate what happens at Parliament. She doesn't have the power to make and break laws. The Queen represents the nation at times of great celebration or sorrow, An example of that is Remembrance Day. She lays a wreath at the cenotaph each year to honour members of the armed forces who died fighting for the country. So she is someone who is a symbol and not necessarily, she's a symbol of power. She doesn't necessarily have all the power. She is very limited in what she can actually do. So what I want you to do is I want you to put these monarchs in order of how much power they had. Okay, so really think about it. How much power does each of these monarchs have? Okay, and I want you to tell me how much power you think they had, and then I want you to put them in order. Can you tell me why the person at the top has the most power and why the person at the bottom has the least power? Spend 6 minutes doing this and come back to me. Okay, so what do we have? We have, in my opinion, this is what I would have done. I would have put Henry II right at the top. He's the most powerful because he has the largest empire of the time, and he has full control over it. He is the king. He has full power over his entire empire. He controls more land in France than the French king. I then would go Elizabeth. Why Elizabeth? Elizabeth started to spread across the sea to North America, and she is the queen. She fought her government for issues to do with marriage, to do with religion, and she exercised that power in a huge quantity. Victoria is third. Victoria, although she doesn't have the political power that Henry II and Elizabeth have, or that Charles or Alfred have, she has one of the largest empires, the largest British Empire of all time. She is the Empress of India, and she wields that power. I put number 4, Alfred the Great. Why? Because he's one of the first English kings. He's in full power, and he, at the time of the Vikings, manages to secure Britain as a nation. Charles I is 5th because although he was executed, up until his execution, he ruled. He had huge amounts of power that the government were unhappy that he was wielding. He had the power to get rid of Parliament and to raise taxes whenever he wanted. William and Mary come in 6th because although they do rule for a long time, they have all their power stripped from them. They don't have the power that other monarchs do. And finally, Elizabeth II. Elizabeth II is very much a modern monarch. She doesn't have the power of her predecessors. The actual powers of the Queen have declined over the history of the monarchy, yet she is of huge national significance. So if we would say the importance of these people, Elizabeth would go higher up in the list. But because it's just a simple question about power, that's what we have. So, final task then. Your final task is to compare Queen Elizabeth II to any monarch that we have studied. How has the power of the monarch changed? So you need to think, how has the power of the monarch changed? And it's up to you to figure out what you think. How has the power of the monarch changed? Sentence starters. So today, Queen Elizabeth II is, and you make a point during the reign of, and you choose another monarch and you say what it was like in their time. And then you need to identify what the change is. This is an important change because you explain what's changed. You then need to do another paragraph in exactly the same way. Please use the words, the key words on the right-hand side. You don't need to use all of them, maybe 2 of them to answer this question. And we're focusing on how the power of the Queen has changed over time. But remember, we're focusing on Elizabeth II and one other monarch that we have studied. So you can do Elizabeth I, Elizabeth II, or Elizabeth II and Victoria like we did right at the beginning, or you can choose another monarch. Please make sure you complete this task. Please make sure you submit this task to your teacher, as this will be graded, and it will, that grade will be recorded. This is a complete, this is a real summation of all the hard work that you've been putting in. And the amount of views we've had on these videos is excellent. The amount of submissions we've had is excellent. And I just want to say thank you very much to all members of Year 7 who have been completing these lessons and doing them really well. And we look forward to seeing you back in school when you start Year 8 history. All right, have a good week. Thank you.